He's a tough street-fighting lawyer with the highest ratings for honesty and integrity. He's here to answer your legal questions and get you the help you need. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Joe Ingram has more than 20 years' experience fighting for his clients here in the state of Alabama. Joe's focus is criminal defense and family law. You don't have to face your legal issue alone. You've got Joe Ingram on your side. In case of sensitive legal matters, you can always reach out directly to Joe at joeingramlaw.com and arrange for a private consultation. And now, Alabama's defender of the defenseless, protector of the people, and all-around good guy, Joe Ingram.
All right. Today's February 28th, 2026. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram, your Alabama lawyer, on WERC 105.5, WBHP 102.5 in Huntsville, and WRTR 105.9 in Tuscaloosa. We made it through winter here in Alabama. There may be some cold days ahead for Alabama. Technically, winter is over. Next week is daylight savings time, which we all love here in the Deep South. And I wish Congress would correct a law that was created at a certain time related to a war. We're past that. We need to fix daylight savings time. We have a great guest today for you the second hour, Jared Welborn, Jay Welborn. He's running for a district court judgeship in Shelby County, new judgeship created on the Republican side of the ticket. We are extremely grateful and proud to bring this candidate to you before the primary vote, and we will visit with him in the second hour. Next week, folks, tune in. It is spy stories time, kind of like bedtime stories for adults. With Spy for Rent, Jeff Hammock, he'll be in the house for Spy for Rent bedtime stories. No kidding, folks. Spy for Rent, Jeff Hammock, Corey Fuller are our exclusive firm investigator for my firm. They do everything in the state of Alabama. They are the names to know if you need a investigator in the state. They serve papers. They investigate your spouse or your paramour. They can do background checks for you. They can do forensic cell phone searches on cell phones. They can do bug sweeps. And they are the best at what they do, and we are proud to have them next week in the house for Spy Stories. So tune in for that. If you're listening to our show, you can download it, the podcast, share it, like it with your friends and family. Encourage others to tune in and become a part of our broadcast. We've got some more great guests coming up in March and April. You need to tune in. We have some really good guests running for statewide office and even on the national level that are going to be coming in to talk with us. So please listen in. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple iTunes, or you can even go download the podcast off my website as well. Joe Ingram Law is all that you need to know. joeingramlaw.com is all you need to know to find the legal lowdown. If you have a question, this was explained to me a little better last week. If I've done a bad job, I think I got a better understanding today talking with the man that runs iHeartRadio here in Birmingham. So if you click on your little radio app and you want to leave a message for the for the Legal Lowdown show on the Spy for Rent hotline, all you have to say is, I'm leaving a message for the Legal Lowdown. Whether you leave it early in the morning or the Glenn Beck Hour, Clay and Buck, Sean Hannity, any show that you decide you want to leave us a message, it doesn't matter. Because if it gets in the computer system, as I understand it, is this correct? He's shaking his head. Yes, we talked about this last week. He can go find it in the system because he is a computer genius, and then we can play it on the show. And we've worked out some of the kinks, and I think we're going to have one today if we get it worked out. Okay, that's all good stuff. We got through that. This is Joe Ingram with the Legal Lowdown. My office represents people from Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, Tuscaloosa, and Mobile. If you need representation, just go look us up, joeingramlaw.com. joeingramlaw.com is all you need to know for legal representation in the state of Alabama. My office represents people in divorce domestic cases, alimony. We prepare prenups and postnuptial agreements as well. We represent people for modification of a divorce decree, such as you may want to modify alimony. You may be paying alimony to your ex-spouse. Your income may have gone down because you may have lost your income. You may have become gravely ill. You're not able to make what you were making before. You may not be able to pay those alimony payments. So you can go to the court and ask that alimony be either increased or decreased due to the circumstances of the parties. We do that. You also might be able to prove that your ex-spouse is cohabitating with somebody and they don't deserve the alimony anymore. That's tougher to prove, but I've done that in a couple of cases. If you go back and listen to one of my very first podcasts, we had a good case in which we proved cohabitation to terminate alimony. You may want to modify child support. These come up all the time. Here's what happens. You get divorced when the children are young, and the children become teenagers. And originally, child support may have been $1,000 a month. After 5-6 years, the child or the children are teenagers. They are in high school. They are in extracurricular activities. They may be in soccer. They may be in volleyball. They may be in travel softball. They may be in football, baseball, whatever it may be. And the money to raise the child has greatly increased from when it was when they were in elementary school. So for all intents and purposes, you may want to revisit child support. Maybe you're making more money. Maybe your ex-spouse is making more money. These are not hard questions to figure out. There's enough information out there on the internet. You can go plug in some numbers and see where you should be on child support. And if you think you're due for an increase, then you might want to reach out to a lawyer to see if you can modify child support as well. You also may have the issue where you were not awarded custody in the original divorce case. And as the kids have grown up, become teenagers, they're more happy seeing you than living with your ex-spouse as the primary custodian. And the kids come to you and they say, hey, I want you to be the custodial parent. Now, that's not the ultimate decision just because they say that. We got to prove in court that it's in the best interest of the child that the children should come live with you for a change in custody. But that happens all the time, more often than not. And it might be for another reason. Your ex-spouse may have an alcohol addiction. Your ex-spouse may have a drug addiction. Your ex-spouse may be seeing someone that is not in the best interest of your children, and they want out of that situation. It's scary, but that happens. And so all those factors come into play, and you file, and we litigate the case. We try to get custody of your children. And we do that, and we win more often than not. So those are all kind of modification cases in divorce court that we talk about that I really wanted to break down today. We also represent people in criminal cases all over the state. We represent people in state cases, which are felonies or misdemeanors. And if they're state cases, they could be everything from murder, rape, manslaughter, robbery, theft of property, drug cases, drug trafficking cases, cocaine, fentanyl, meth. We represent people in federal court, people that are convicted felon that have guns in their possession. 18 U.S.C. 922 G1 is the federal statute that the U.S. attorneys love to charge. Convicted felon in possession of a firearm. We also represent people before the licensing boards. Everything from doctors, pharmacists, pharmacy techs, nurses, nurse practitioners, dentists, dental assistants, any professional board in the state of Alabama, we can represent you. And we do those all the time. So that covers a little bit about me. Oh, we also represent people in municipal court. Municipal court is primary misdemeanors, possession of marijuana second, DUIs, domestic violence cases, traffic ticket situations. Those are primarily the cases you see in municipal court as well. Okay, that covers that. So, legal news of the week nationally. Legal news of the week nationally. Not a lot going on in the world this week other than some really big stories. We have to mention the Tuesday night State of the Union address. We have to mention it. We have the State of the Union address, and then we have the State of the Extremes show. I mentioned this last week that the Democrats were talking about alternative events, and they did them from Oregon. They did them from the National Mall in Washington, D.C. I went back and looked at some of these events. The one in Oregon, they had frogs on the stage. They had frogs on the stage. The one event on the National Mall was Joy Reid. I think she got fired from MSNBC or show, or she may have left. Not sure about that. Anyway, she was the host of it. That was comical, that event. Folks, you just look like crazies out there. It just looks like normal people versus the crazies now. And that's how Governor Huckabee termed it. The governor of Arkansas, she termed it this week. She said, now it's just turned into the normals versus the crazies. I thought that was the best way to put it out there. I don't know. It's kind of scary. They always have the party that is not in power is always entitled to equal time after the State of the Union address. So this year they had the governor from Virginia who just got elected, and she claimed to be a moderate. For all intents and purposes, she is one step from Comrade Socialist Mandani in New York. Yes, I don't know if she's as crazy as him, but she's getting pretty close. And she has gone all in, just like California. They're just taxing everything that they can now. Uber rides. Anything that they can, that anybody that makes any money that is doing a contribute to society in a normal way, they are taxing all the normal people for all the other people that do not contribute to society. It's really scary out there. It's really scary out there right now. What's coming? If you look at the Republican bench and you look at the Democratic bench, it's a no-brainer. Republicans have 10 or 12 candidates that are national candidates. The Democrats have a bunch of people out there on the fringes. That is not where mainstream America is on the fringes, on the coast. All this nut stuff they talk about. Scary out there. Anyway, Trump set them up like he always does. He talked about immigration. By the way, I went back and looked because I saw this story and I wanted to verify it. You can go pull this up yourself, folks. Go back to 1995. You can go Google this. There's a C-SPAN video when President Bill Clinton was president. He gave the same exact set of facts Trump did. He talked about immigration and getting all the illegal aliens out of this country. The same thing he said. Guess what? The whole chamber stood up and applauded and clapped. That was in 1995. Where have we gone in 31 years? We've gone to the fringes. So Trump is not that far off from Bill Clinton in 31 years. Imagine that. Unbelievable. And then Trump set him up. He said, if you do not believe that your your first job as a member of Congress is to protect the citizens of the United States. If you agree with me, stand up. All the Republicans all the Democrats sat on their hands. That became a commercial for the Republican National Committee right then. He set them up for it. They walked right into it. They didn't have to. And the State of the Union address has become this one thing over the last, probably since Reagan. Reagan was the best. He was called the great communicator. He weaved personal stories into his speech. Everybody's done it. Clinton, Obama, Bush, Biden in his own way, I guess. They tried to say Trump was running a game show. You get a Congressional Medal of Honor. You get a Congressional Honor. You get a medal. You get a medal. Those were all great stories, and those were all real Americans, and those were people in the military. Two of the people that were recognized were 100 years old that served this country 60 years ago. They were lovely men to see, and they were 100, and they looked great to be 100. So if you can't stand for that, what can you stand for? But everybody did stand for the men's hockey team. These are young men, young kids. They were just glad to be at the White House. They were glad to be invited to the State of the Union address. It wasn't a political statement. They were just celebrating being a member of the national hockey team. You know what this falls into? Trump was celebrating America exceptionalism. We are still exceptional. We're still the shining city on the hill. Governor John Winthrop from Virginia. Still the same saying that Reagan said in the 80s. We are the shining city on the hill. There you go. The biggest story that's out there that no one's talking about, and it really scares me to death, and it affects us all. Do you know what the Federal Reserve Bank did last week? They pumped $18.5 billion into the United States banking system through overnight repositories. This is the fourth largest liquidity injection since COVID. It was even higher than the peak of the dot-com bubble, but I'm sure everything's okay. Not. Folks, it's coming. I'm not out here trying to say that the house is on fire. Everybody need to run. I'm just telling you what's coming in the Federal Reserve market for all of us. Jamie Dimon, you know I love Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Bank. He's Mr. Wall Street. Every time he speaks, you need to listen. He gave an interview this week, and he is starting to sound the alarm bells that there is serious credit type money issues in the system. In fact, J.P. Morgan Bank had to do a write-down last year related to the automobile industry of over $100 billion. There are issues out there, and if you're not paying attention, we are on the cusp, and it may be 24 months away from the 2008 issue again, but we are there again. It's coming. The national debt is the biggest issue we have, and no one's talking about it. It's on a national level, and it's on every state level. We gave out too much money. The Fed has too much money on their balance sheet as debt. I'm sorry. It's the biggest issue affecting all of us, and it's affecting all of your children for the next 20 or 30 or 40 years that they're going to be paying for if we still survive as a country. That is my biggest concern, is the national debt. This was Jamie Dimon's quote. There will be a cycle one day. I don't know what confluence of events will cause that cycle. My anxiety is high over it. I'm not assuaged by the fact that asset prices are high. In fact, I think that adds to the risk. We have the real estate market at an all-time high. Think back to right before the the housing collapse in 2008. Anybody that wanted to buy a home could. We had ninja loans, which basically meant no proof of income. You didn't have to prove a job. You just go down and sign a credit app. You could get a house. We had people that had interest-only loans, which means they weren't buying a house. They were just renting a house and paying the interest. If you're not seeing the signs, you need to look around. The stock market can't go up forever without a serious correction. You can't buy a house right now. Housing prices in the Birmingham area start around $400,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. That's crazy. That's crazy. Go look at the market. Go look at Zillow.com. House prices have doubled in less than 10 years, 100%. No way. No way is that real. Don't believe it. And the cryptocurrency market is coming down. It's well overbought. And everybody's bought into the AI technology. NVIDIA reported on Thursday this week. Everybody's overextending themselves credit-wise to be a part of the AI bubble. And there's going to be a correction. Don't know when, but it's going to come. So, scary thought. The Supreme Court ruled last week on the tariffs. They said that Trump did not have the authority to use the law that he used for the tariffs. So the Supreme Court sent it back to the lower court to figure out what to do with all the money that has come in since the tariffs were enacted last year. FedEx came out this week. They said that they're going to refund money to clients that paid tariff money. Good on them. I don't know how this is going to work out. We may have a bunch of plaintiff lawyers that jump in this as sharks and file lawsuits on behalf of different corporations or entities to try to get money back for all the tariff money. And what did Trump do? The very next day, he turned around and said, okay, I can't use that law. I'll use another law, and we'll just make it a national 15% tariff. I gotta love Trump. For criminal legal national news this week, it's either Ryan Ruth or Ryan Routh. Not sure how you say his last name. He was sentenced to life in prison for attempting to assassinate a presidential candidate. Corporate and big law, I talked about this last week. They are tied and heavily invested to managing AI risk and mergers all over the country. In fact, they have bet the farm on it. Profits for mergers and acquisitions in 25 were through the roof. 26 appears to be leaner. We're going to talk more about these data processing centers. This is big news, folks, and it's going to be big news for the next 15 or 20 years. I got to thinking about what are the biggest judicial cases that the Supreme Court has ever heard. And when you go through this list, it'll make sense to you. What is the most biggest controversial Supreme Court cases we've ever heard that have affected American society, law, and politics? Well, the first one is easy. First one's easy. Roe versus Wade, 1973, which established the constitutional right to abortion, which divided our nation on moral and legal grounds. Now, that case was essentially overturned about, 12 or 24 months ago? And we'll talk about that after the break. They tried to scare Supreme Court justice, change their vote. Didn't happen. We'll be back after news and weather. All right.
You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Joe is a 20-year veteran of the Alabama courts specializing in criminal defense and family law. If you need a private legal consultation, email Joe at joeingramlaw.com. And now, welcome back to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram.
All right. Back to The Legal Lowdown, February 28, 2026. We were talking about the biggest cases from the Supreme Court. Not going to be able to get through them all, but Roe versus Wade. If you remember the story, the opinion was leaked from somebody in the Supreme Court. They thought it was one of the justices' judicial clerks. They never did find the person. And they were trying to scare the justices in their homes, marching out in front of their house. The people that I love. Alito, Kavanaugh, those guys. Didn't work. They still put their opinion out. Anyway, biggest opinions from the Supreme Court that affected us all. Obviously, Dred Scott versus Sanford. It ruled that African Americans were not citizens and slaves could not sue for freedom, which led to the Civil War. Brown versus Board, 1954, declared desegregated schools unconstitutional, which led into the 60s and the 70s, people standing in the schoolhouse doors, all that. You know all that history. Bush v. Gore, 2000, hanging chads. Supreme Court basically cited the presidential election in 2000, if you're old enough to remember that. Miranda versus Arizona, 1966. Everybody knows what the Miranda rights are. That came from the Supreme Court as well. Out of all the cases that were on the list, the one that really shocked me the most, because it was a state court case, People versus O.J. Simpson in 1995. If you lived back then, that trial lasted over a year, and we watched it every day on TV. As sad as it was, not laughing about it, I'm just saying that case had one of the biggest impacts in our lives. Some people in the news this week nationally. Zachary Ty Bryan. Who is he? Well, he was an actor on Home Improvement with Tim Allen, Tim the Two Men Taylor. He's had some issues of domestic violence. In fact, I think he's on his second or third DUI. He's had 2 prior DUIs. This was his third. He just got sentenced to 16 months in jail. So very sad for him. That's another young star that didn't have people looking out for him as he got older. Some domestic news this week. The singer Pink has allegedly separated from her husband, Corey Hart. They've been married for 20 years. They have 2 children. She first denied the report. I think Pink was just trying to be protective of her children. She put a quote out that says, "Thank you for letting me know. Would you also like to tell my children that are 14 and 9 years of age as well who are unaware?" But for all intents and purposes, it looks like it is finally over in their marriage. Their marriage is so similar to most marriages in life that last more than 20 years. You have good times, you have bad times. They've done counseling individually, they've done marriage counseling, but it does look like their marriage is headed for the hills for all intents and purposes. I love this story because it reminds me of Senator Mitch Connell of Kentucky. During Trump's first term in office, anytime there was downtime, he was like, let's go put more judges in the federal judiciary. Well, it was just announced this last week, a group of Bush-era judges have decided to take senior status and step down. So Trump is going to have a whole new set of judges to replace. The chief judge of the 6th Circuit, a judge from the 2nd Circuit, and a judge from the 10th Circuit are all stepping away from service. And so President Trump will get to appoint a whole bunch of new circuit court federal judges in their roles. Never understood this. If I was a federal judge and I'm appointed for life, I would stay for life. One of them made the comment, I'll be 70 in a few months and everyone I know is retired. Well, okay, but we don't have the kind of job that most people have. Certainly as a federal circuit court judge, it's not that hard a job. But for all intents and purposes, these people are backing away. So Trump will get to pick a whole new group of folks to replace them. There are 16 federal appellate judges appointed by Democrats who are eligible to go now. Obviously, they're going to wait until the administration changes before they give up their time. Okay, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about the Clintons who were subpoenaed to testify in Congress, and they said, no, thank you. And then they decided, we'll vote to hold you in contempt of court for violating a federal subpoena, which means you could be referred to the DOJ to be prosecuted for not showing up. And then they said, okay, we'll testify. Well, then the story got kind of murky this week. The Clintons didn't come to D.C. to testify. Congress goes up to New York, where the Clintons live, to take their deposition. Don't really understand that. Anyway, does it really matter? I don't know. I don't think so. At the end of the day, they got their depositions, and they're recorded, and they'll be played in full. I'm already told there are some moments that Hillary Clinton got really hot in her deposition. Nancy Mace, who is a congresswoman of South Carolina, crucified her in 3 rounds. Then Hillary came out, as Hillary always does, and they always have their speeches down so well of what they're going to say. If you think back to Clinton, I did not have sexual intercourse with that woman. They always have their lines written down so perfectly. Hillary's line was, I've never met Jeffrey Epstein. I've never been to Jeff's office. I've never been on his plane. I don't know anything about him. Oh, but by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell was at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. Probably the biggest wedding of that year. Former president's daughter gets married. 500 people to that shindig. Her pictures all over the TV at the wedding, and you don't know who she is? Come on. Anyway, Nancy Mace, not Nancy Grace, who is running for the governor of South Carolina, came out yesterday after the deposition for Hillary Clinton on Thursday. And she put this out on X or Twitter, whatever you call it. I want to thank many of my GOP colleagues for trusting me with a generous amount of time today to question Secretary Clinton on her ties to Jeffrey Epstein. I love his part, guys. I am not suicidal. The tires on my car were recently rotated. All of my security cameras work. If you know anything about the Clintons, you have to love that. That's kind of tongue-in-cheek, and that's also saying, please don't come kill me. Oh, man. You can't make that up. That's pretty good. Bill Clinton testified yesterday on Friday. I'm already told that he's put out that he can't remember 25 years ago. Jeffrey Epstein was in the White House 17 times. Bill Clinton had been on his plane somewhere between 17 and 26 times. And you don't remember him? Y'all know how sharp Bill Clinton is? He had almost a photographic memory. He could see you today and say, I remember meeting you in 1994. I remember what you had for dinner that night. How's your mama? And he doesn't know what his relationship is with Jeffrey Epstein. Don't know if I buy that one. Don't know that I buy that one. Something to think about in the coming days. But I don't really think they are the targets here. I think their names just came up, and I think there were 2 pictures of Bill Clinton that looked kind of unusual at best. And so Congress, being what they needed to do in this story, which is very serious to the trafficking of minor children, thought, well, we'll at least go talk to them and see if they can tell us anything, how Jeffrey had ties to the most important people on the globe for, I guess, 25 or 30 years. How he was so connected. and not just here, over the pond with former Prince Andrew. Anyway, something we need to talk about a lot, and we're going to talk about it, state legal news. The Alabama legislature announced this week that the new proposed legislation is dead for all practical purposes. They ran a story out last week that they were going to stop having elected PSC commissioners, that they were going to be appointed. And then they ran a story out for new legislation to do that. And then everybody said, well, why are you taking the vote away from us? Even though most people don't even know what the Public Service Commission is or does, even though we've talked a lot about it on this show for the last 6 weeks. Anyway, and then I saw a news article this week of how they tried to characterize it. That the bill was dead to kill left extremists for trying to take over the Public Service Commission. And I thought to myself, well, that isn't necessarily true. I don't know of any left extremists in Alabama that have been on the PSC in the last 40 years. You look at Twinkle Kavanaugh, Lucy Baxley, all these folks, by and large, are Republicans. I don't think they're left extremists. But then you had to go back and really read the article. What they're trying to stop and what they're claiming is that Soros's people have taken over the Public Service Commission in Georgia, and they were afraid it was going to fall over here into Alabama. I don't think that's going to happen. Alabama's a deep red state. I don't think that was ever really an issue. But there's been enough commentary about the PSC the last couple of weeks. We talked about the recording that came out last week. Nobody likes having something taken away from them, even though if they don't know what it is. So for all intents and purposes, I don't think that's definitely not going to come back before this legislative session that ends before the primaries. They're going to try to get out of town probably in April so they can go home and start running for office for the primaries. So that's dead. Maybe that'll come around in 27 when nobody's paying attention again. But right now, everybody's paying attention to that, and nobody wants to touch that. So the other big thing that's going on in the state, all over the state, Birmingham, Shelby County, Mobile, everywhere, the stories about data centers. This is huge, folks. This is a big story. There was a story this week, multi-billion-dollar Birmingham AI factory taking shape. Artificial intelligence infrastructure provider Nebus wants to build a multi-billion-dollar AI factory on the former region's Lakeshore Operations Center. If you know anything about Lakeshore, the square footage over there, not footage, Lakeshore Parkway, it's 75 acres. They want to create a 2-building complex that would generate 300 megawatts of power. It would take 30 months to build. They'd say, well, it's going to create a bunch of jobs for construction. Yeah, but once the building is built, here is the problem. It's not ever going to employ more than 100 people at any given time. This is not something that creates jobs. This is something that sucks the blood out of your community and all of your infrastructure as well. And it may be an eyesore. And we don't know if this is going to cause cancers. I don't know. I'm not being a conspiratorial person here. I'm just talking about what we don't know about this yet. So these data centers have a lot of things to talk about. Shelby County, made a decision last week that they're going to put strict guidelines on if you try to put a data center there. We've had Matt Gentry on the show twice, who's running for the Alabama Public Service Commission, who has talked about these data centers, what they bring, what they don't bring. They take a huge swath of land to put one on. It takes a lot of concrete to build. It takes a lot of water probably to cool it. It takes a lot of power to generate these. We do not want the consumers to pay for the power of these data centers. And then what do they really create for us? They just hold data. Now, I'm not saying we don't need these. I'm not against data centers. I'm just saying there's a lot to figure out before we start building these things. This is a lot of new technology that we've got to talk to. Most people do not understand all this. It's a lot to read about. It's a lot to comprehend. You just hope the people that are in office are doing their due diligence and their research before they sign on to let these data centers being built in your community or in your state. That's all I'm thinking about here. So for all of you out there that care about your community and your state, start doing some research on data centers because they are coming. They are being built. They're being built in California. They're being built in Texas. We talked about one being built in Texas that's taking a huge amount of energy to run it, but they're using gas energy that's coming from 3 states away that's going to power it. So the data centers are a lot to talk about and need a lot more information before we get there. So that's what I got on that. I think the rest of the time we're going to talk about some things that we have mentioned earlier this year that I want to get back to. If you have a personal injury case, if you have a car wreck case, what do you do once you have the car wreck? Well, hopefully you get out of the car, you exchange information, your driver's license, insurance information, maybe even get their cell phone number. Make sure they're okay. If anybody's injured, call 911. Do not be afraid to go to the hospital and get checked out if you've been in a car wreck. Do not be afraid to go get checked out if you've been in a car wreck. If you have and you're not at fault, then you'll be reimbursed for going to the hospital. Not right away, but you will be eventually. It takes time, but you'll be compensated for your personal injury case. If you've been hit by a tractor trailer, you obviously need to go to the hospital. You've been hit by a vehicle that, for all intents and purposes, weighs several thousand pounds, and you've probably been hit at 30 or 40 miles an hour, you're going to be sore the next day. So you do need to get checked out. I'm not saying fake your injuries. I'm saying go get checked out and see if you're hurt. Obviously, if you've hit the windshield or you can't move and you're not ambulatory, then you do need to go to the hospital. And if you have a case, then you go see a personal injury attorney and they can represent you. There's no cost to you. Those are what we call contingency fee cases. The only way the lawyer wins is if they record money on your behalf. And in the state of Alabama, there is a 2-year statute of limitations to file a personal injury lawsuit. Most personal injury cases are never filed in court unless it involves serious injuries. The lawyer works the case up. They get your medicals. They get your lost wages. They get all the money that you lost from your car wreck. And they send what we call a settlement demand package to the insurance company. And they negotiate your case, and it takes months to negotiate. I've got one that we started back in November and probably won't settle till June. But we're getting close. But from the day you file your claim against an insurance company until you've reached your maximum medical improvement, as I would say it could take 6 months to a year to settle your case. So you need to file your claim as soon as you can after you've been hurt in a car wreck. And people ask me all the time, how much is my personal injury case worth? Well, that's not an easy question to answer. The value of your personal injury case depends on a number of factors, including the severity of your injuries, the amount of your medical bills and lost wages, the extent of your pain and suffering. Your pain and my pain are different. It's hard to put a dollar amount on pain. Everybody knows what medical bills are. Medical bills are the medical bills. Lost wages are the time you were off work. Those are easy numbers to quantify. But your injury is different. Did you break your arm? Did you break your leg? Are you paraplegic? Did you bust your head in the windshield and get 10 stitches in your forehead? Those are all things that we can't quantify. We can get close, but no one can give you an exact number on those kind of things. What are the evidence that you need in a personal injury case? You need your medical records. Obviously, you need police reports. Photos. Photos are huge. If you're in a car wreck and you have bruises the next day, start taking pictures of your bruises. If you're in the hospital, have someone else take pictures of you every other day to see how long it takes for you to recover from your injuries. I had a client one time that was severely injured in a personal injury case. Their bruising lasted for weeks. The second day, the bruising was worse than the first day from the swelling. They could not even put sweatpants on their legs. Honest to goodness. Take pictures. They're huge. Witness statements. If anybody was around and they're willing to get involved and they're willing to make a statement, get a statement from them. Better yet, just get somebody to pull out an iPhone, cellular phone, get a witness statement, audio version. Get their name, their address, their phone number, where they live. Get them to tell their story on a video camera. And you got it. That's better than a written statement. They were there, they saw it. It's huge. Obviously, you want pictures of the crime scene, pictures of your car, especially if your car was totaled. Picture tells 1,000 words. All this evidence is vital to building a strong claim. We talked about this. Well, you have to go to court. No, you may not have to go to court. For all intents and purposes, most injury personal cases are settled out of court through negotiations. However, if the insurance company is unwilling to offer a fair settlement, a lawsuit may be filed necessary, and the case could potentially go to trial. And where you're injured makes a huge difference. Jefferson County is better than some counties in Alabama. Some counties you don't want to file a lawsuit because they are ultra conservative and they don't want to give you any money. Something to think about there. And sometimes you can sue more than one person in a personal injury case. Maybe the truck driver hit you. You sue the trucking company and you sue the truck driver individually if he was under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Maybe he's had prior DUI in his past. You might be able to sue 2 insurance companies for your personal injury case. If you have been hurt on the job, that's called a worker comp case. In a worker comp case, those are contingency fees as well. But lawyers are limited to only 15% of the recovery, and it should be. And that's worker comp cases. So next hour, Jay Welborn, who is running for district court judge, is going to be in the studio. We're going to visit with him, and you're going to get to hear all about him running for judge in Shelby County. You're listening to Legal Lowdown on WERC 105.5, also in Huntsville and Tuscaloosa. It's February the 28th, 2026. Folks, winter is over. Thank God we've made it. If you're a runner, you get to start doing some real running next week. We're going to have highs in the 70s almost every day. It's time to start getting your mileage in, guys. We're there. We made it through winter. And we have daylight savings time that's coming next week. I'm so grateful for that. We made it through winter. Jay Welborn's in the house. He'll be with us in a few minutes. We'll be back after news and weather. All right.
You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. He's a tough street-fighting lawyer with the highest ratings for honesty and integrity. He's here to answer your legal questions and get you the help you need. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Joe Ingram has more than 20 years' experience fighting for his clients here in the state of Alabama. Joe's focus is criminal defense and family law. You don't have to face your legal issue alone. You've got Joe Ingram on your side. In case of sensitive legal matters, you can always reach out directly to Joe at joeingramlaw.com and arrange for a private consultation. And now, Alabama's defender of the defenseless, protector of the people, and all-around good guy, Joe Ingram.
All right. You're back for the second hour of the Legal Lowdown. February 28, 2026. We made it through winter for all practical purposes here in Alabama. All right, so we teased it up the first hour. We have a great guest in the studio today. Jared Welborn is running for a district court judgeship in Shelby County. He's in the studio with us. Jared, how are you today, sir?
Doing well, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. All right, Jared. So first of all, introduce yourself to Talk Radio audience before we get in talking about your background, your history.
Well, again, you said, as you told everybody out in Radio Land, my name is Jared Welborn. A lot of people know me as Jay. That's the moniker that I got when I married my current wife. Her family grew up calling her E because her name is Erin, and so by her first initial, and so that just transposed to me. I called her E, so she started calling me Jay. And 15 years later, it has stuck, fortunately. But no, I'm a resident of North Shelby County. Have three wonderful kids, 27, 21, and 12. And so we're very happy there. Native of North Mississippi originally, came to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa in '94, and outside of a short stint to Morgantown, West Virginia for 2 years, never left the state.
Okay. Kind of an age gap between the two and the last one? Was that one planned?
Yeah, well, we finally figured out what caused that. And
okay. Now just joking. Good thing. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your resume and how you decided to run for a judgeship in Shelby County. Talk us through your past experiences in the legal world.
Well, and I'm not a first career attorney, Joe. I'm 50 years old and got a lot of life under my boots, and I have not always been an attorney. It was probably a third or a fourth career for me.
Oh, wow.
Before that, I worked in the fire service. Prior to that, I was in student ministry with the United Methodist Church.
Wow.
And then before that, I was involved in operations management and was involved in corporate security and executive protection. But that being said, I remember the day very distinctly when I walked into my father-in-law's office, who was a practicing attorney in the Birmingham area for about 50 years. We had an early morning house fire, and I walked in smelling like smoke and everything else, dirty, filthy. Had not had even a chance to shower before I was supposed to come into the office to work, because I worked my 48 hours off, serving papers and taking emails and responding and setting appointments and everything for his law practice. And he called me into the office and said, I thought you were a whole lot brighter than you are. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, at 34 years of age, you were still intentionally running into buildings that are on fire. That just does not sound smart to me. And I said, well, what am I going to do? And he said, well, you have a knack for this law thing. He said, you've always got good ideas and different perspectives of how we should, approach cases, and maybe you ought to go to law school. And I told him I had no idea how I would do that. It had been 16 years since I was out of college, and, had no intent of ever scraping up money to go to Cumberland or Alabama law or anything like that, and did not want to sit for the LSAT. So he directed me to go to Birmingham School of Law, and he said, you can pay as you go, take a semester, and if you like it, great. If you don't, then no skin off your nose. You're 3 months out.
Yeah.
And took a full caseload, fell in love with it.
Okay.
Ended up getting a JA position with Judge Pat Stevens, who's now the presiding domestic relations judge in Jefferson County. Worked with Judge Stevens for probably 4 years, my entire time. And then about 6 months after I graduated law school, and she encouraged me to go ahead and spread my wings, as it were. And I hung out my own shingle and started practicing with my wife and my father-in-law.
Yeah.
And did that for about 5 years until my father-in-law retired. And my wife and I went into practice together, and I practiced with her until she was elected to the bench in 2022. She is the current sitting juvenile court judge and presiding juvenile court judge in Shelby County. And I realized that at that point, I could not handle a two-attorney practice just by myself. And so I either needed to go to work for a firm or find a job as a state attorney. And fortunately, I was blessed enough to be hired as an administrative hearing officer for the Department of Pardon and Parole. And it was my job at that point to conduct parole evidentiary hearings for allegations of parole violations for parolees for the state, and then to find fact of whether or not there was sufficient evidence to find them guilty of the violations that they were alleged, or to find insufficient evidence of whether or not we were going to put them back out on the street.
Okay. All right. So let's go back just a little bit for a minute. When you got to work with Judge Stevens here in Jefferson County, you got to see a lot of divorce work, a lot of modifications, rule niceties, the gamut.
100%.
Yeah. You got to see life from the bench side as opposed to a practicing attorney first.
Correct.
Do you think that gave you a better view when you hung out your shingle, if you will, into private practice, knowing how the court looks at things on the other side of the screen when we file documents all the time? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It never ceased to amaze me. I would get phone calls from attorneys in the office all the time and go, I just filed a motion. Have you gotten it yet? And
have you set it for a hearing?
Exactly. And as a practicing attorney, when you file that, you immediately get that kickback from Alicourt that says, hey, this motion's been filed. And y'all think at that point that the judge now has it on their email.
Right.
They don't.
All right.
It has to go all the way down to Montgomery, hit the vault system, and come back to ours. And it could be anywhere from 5 minutes to I've seen it take 36 hours before it actually populates in our motion queue, depending on how many people are actually doing work
right.
on Alicourt or not. So that being said, it's definitely a different perspective to have seen it from the bench side and to see it and how that role then transfers to practicing attorneys who are trying to come before the court and everything else. And that's where I learned courtroom management.
Right.
When to set and how to set cases, what cases, based on how long they've been pending, which ones take precedence, which ones come first, whether it's an original divorce, whether it's a 0.1, 0.2, 0.6, whatever it is.
Right.
So.
I had a case this week, Jay, down in Tuscaloosa County. It was set for a hearing this week. I needed to get it continued the next day because it wasn't ripe. It was a criminal case. I called the judge's office, and the JA was very nice, and she said, well, Joe, it's not even shown up in our queue yet. I said, well, I filed it this morning at 9 o'clock. She said, hadn't made it through. In Tuscaloosa, it goes to the court clerk, and then they send it up to the judge's queue or whatever. And then she went back. She said, give me the case number. She went and looked it up. She said, oh, I see it. I walked her through, the issues, and she said, we'll grant it. Don't worry about being here tomorrow. But it is so funny. As my side, when you're practicing law and you file stuff and we do everything instantaneously now, and you think I have clients and they're like, Joe, you filed an emergency motion. Why hasn't it even been set for a hearing yet? It's been 14 days, and we're here in Jefferson County. We have 4 dedicated domestic relation judges. I'm like, do you know how many cases each judge has on any given day? Brian Huff was here with us back in December, January. I think he told us he had roughly 700 active cases on his docket any day of the week. And so, when you're a lawyer and you're an advocate, you're trying to get your client to court if they really need some relief or they need some kind of something done in a divorce case. What the people on the street don't see or understand is you're not the only one. And that's Jefferson County. When you go to Shelby County, they're great. All I'm saying is they don't have dedicated divorce judges. They don't have dedicated civil judges. They don't have dedicated criminal law judges. The judges down there, by and large, do everything in the circuit court realm, right?
That is 100% correct. We have, right now, we've got 4 sitting circuit judges, and they all take a share of anything that might come before the circuit court. I mean, I think there's one judge that does not hear domestic cases, but the rest of them do.
Yeah.
And as I said, my wife is a district judge, but she also sits as a special sitting circuit judge by administrative order so that she can also hear divorce cases. The position I'm running for will also have that. We have a new incoming presiding judge in October of this year in Shelby County. Jonathan Spann will be our new presiding judge. Jonathan's a good friend of mine, but he ensured me that if I was blessed enough to get this election and get a seat on the bench, that I would get all the district civil cases. Some of Judge Duncan's traffic ticket overflow, because I think he's got somewhere around 12,000 just traffic tickets on his criminal docket. And then he smiled and said, and don't think you're not going to get out of your fair share of the domestic docket, Jay, because that's where you have a lot of experience as well. So,
yeah. We're talking with Jay Welborn. He's running for Shelby County District Court Judge, Republican side of the ticket for the primary in May
19th.
May 19th. Not that you have a calendar marking off the days.
83 days, not that I'm counting.
Not that you're counting or anything like that. Okay, so let's go. We talked about that. It made me think about something, David. Thank you for telling me that. All right. So let's talk about being a hearing officer for the parole system. Mm-hmm. Did you actually go to the parole to the prisons and hear the cases, or how was that set up?
Well, when there's an allegation that a parolee has violated their parole, they're detained and taken to a county jail based on where they're picked up. And in my 2 years of working, I covered areas from Colbert County and Franklin County all the way down to Tuscaloosa, all the way over to Randolph County, all the way up to Jackson County. I mean, I spent the better part of fall of 2022 in Gunnersville. Wow. Which it's a beautiful drive from here up there. I mean, especially in the fall, you get to see the trees and go through the forest and everything else. But when those parolee hearings are set, I go to the jail. Mm-hmm. And then they bring the inmates out to a booking area or to an interview room. And law enforcement is sometimes there if they show up for the hearing to provide testimony for the state side based on what allegations and the charges that the parolee may have violated. The parolee is entitled to have an attorney represent them if they choose to, or to provide any sort of evidence. And we sit there and we have just a very informal kind of hearing to present evidence and testimony to see if anybody has any other information that they can offer to the hearing officer. And then after all the testimony and the evidence is presented, then what I'd do is I would write up a report, and then I would go back to my office at the house, and I would type up a report and make a recommendation based on whatever my findings are, and then either find sufficient evidence that they did violate the conditions of their parole or find insufficient evidence that they didn't. It's not really a guilty or not guilty situation at that point. And then I would send my recommendations down to the parole board. There was a 3-person board at that time in Montgomery, and then when they would meet, they would review those files and then decide whether to issue a sanction of 30 or 45 or 60 days in the county jail, or whether they wanted to give them a little bit stiffer sanction up to a possible revocation and another 60 months in the Department of Corrections custody.
Yeah. How many people in the state do that position, just out of curiosity?
At the time, they have 7 slots for that. But at the time I worked for them, We only had 5. And so there were 5 of us that covered the entire state.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Not to name any names, not to anything like that. I just want you to think from your experience doing that. What was the most egregious case you can remember factually? No names.
Egregious as in what the violation was?
Right,
or,
right.
You know, a lot of these guys that are on parole, if they are alleged to have violated the condition of their parole, and of course, I don't necessarily know what they were originally, you know, in the Department of Corrections custody for their original crime that they're now out on parole for. I mean, I have an idea. You know, I tell people all the time in my job with pardon and parole, I sat across the table from more murderers than I ever did in private practice as an attorney. But you don't ever really hear the details of those cases. I mean, I've sat across the table from murderers. I've sat across the table from, people who, grand theft, assault, drug charges, and things like that. But as far as violations go, most of them are your run-of-the-mill. They either, bought a bag of weed or, didn't show up for a drug screen or did not report. Or a lot of them are technical violations where they just, I didn't report this week. So, their PO picks up on them and pick them up and they take them to county.
Yeah.
So most of the guys that and women that I dealt with don't want to go back. I've heard some horror stories. I won't regale those with you here. But most of them don't want to go back to prison, believe it or not. There are some people that just can't help themselves, I guess. But most of the people that I dealt with really, most of them are technical violations or small little things like shoplifting. There was a guy one time that got picked up because he, had to go get some undergarments and some Tylenol because he had sinus headache and everything else. And, unfortunately, he didn't have the money and he shoplifted them and got picked up for it.
Yeah.
And it's cases like that. In my experience, there weren't any real egregious violations once they were on the parole system.
Okay. That's it. That's good to know. All right. We're talking with Jay Welborn. He's running for Shelby County District Court Judge. Jay, let me ask you something. Most people out there, we know the law. We know the difference between district court, circuit court, all these titles, things like that. Tell the people out there what a district court judge does and what their role is in the court system.
Well, I like to liken district court as kind of the front porch or the front door of the justice system. I mean, it is the lower level of the state court system. I have people ask me all the time, well, am I in your district? Well, if you live in Shelby County, you are in my district because district court is just the lower level of the state court system. District court hears everything from preliminary hearings on felonies. Here's all misdemeanor cases. I say all preliminary hearings on felonies, except for a handful of certain types of cases. But that's where all the criminal cases begin. Traffic tickets that are not written inside of a municipality that has their own municipal justice system. They hear small claims cases up to $6,000. They hear civil property and monetary damage cases up to $20,000. So small damage car wrecks, property damage, things of that nature. They hear evictions and unlawful detainers. Landlord-tenant stuff, all that wonderful thing that comes with renting and owning property. They hear, in this case, juvenile court. They hear juvenile court cases involving kids that are either dependent or delinquent. They hear child support cases.
Right.
And as I said before, in this particular seat, I will also be a special sitting circuit judge. So this particular seat will also hear domestic relations cases, so divorces, modifications, custody modifications, child support modifications, things of that nature.
Yeah.
But as I said, this is where 98% of the population has their first interaction with the judicial system.
That's true.
And district court truly is the people's court. And I don't mean that in a Judge Wapner sense, but really, if you've seen that show, that's exactly what it is.
I'm glad you said that because I was about to bring this up in a way. I'm glad you said it first. So, when you start practicing, you take everything you can to put food on the table. In 24 years of practice, I've had all kinds of experiences in district court. I had some corporate clients that I did a lot of small claims, contract collections for, breach of contract, things like that. I loved all those cases because they were opportunities to be in a courtroom and try a case, even though it was what we call district court, or maybe from my sense now looking back, called baby court, right? And that's not putting any.
Absolutely.
And so, but it's still important to the people that those names are in the courtroom that day. And my worst experience I hated was when the other side was pro se and didn't have counsel. It drove me insane because the judge gives them more latitude, right? Because they don't know the law. They know that they're there. They know that they are entitled to their day in court. It just drove me insane when they were pro se. I would rather have counsel than somebody that didn't have a lawyer. And so those days turn into like the People's Court on TV or Judge Judy. But even though it was fun and entertaining, it was important. I loved it. I enjoyed it. Anytime I still get to do some of those cases, and I still have some collection cases for some clients, I love those cases to be in the courtroom because it matters to the people whose names are the plaintiff and defendant in that case. And it's important, whether it's 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, or 100,000. You agree?
100%. Everybody wants to have their story heard.
Right.
And it's important. And whether they're pro se or whether they have an attorney, and I understand your frustration with one-sided pro se counsel, and when you got counsel on one side, pro se on the other. It's even more frustrating when it's a double pro se.
Yes.
Because then it becomes he said, she said, bickering and arguing and finger pointing and, well, he did this, well, she did that, and they did this and they did that. And really, when it comes down to the end of the day, those people just want the opportunity to have somebody who is going to sit there and listen and understand that it's important to them. Mm-hmm. And that's what, the dignity and the respect that those people deserve when they come in, regardless of whether they've got a team of 8 lawyers or whether they're coming in with, a stack of legal pads and everything else with hand notes and Post-its all over it and, receipt copies and, hot tape from, the gas station from where I had to pick up this and that. They want to know that somebody's going to listen and at least understand where they're coming from. And that's important to me because I've been on that side of it. District court has made me a very good living in my career as a private practice attorney, and that's where the majority of my practice has been. Yeah. Outside of divorce cases. Yeah.
I had a case one time with Judge Bobby Bynum here in Jefferson County, and it was a collection case against a business. And anyway, one of the witnesses for the business was Hispanic. They didn't bring an interpreter. And when they asked the questions of the person that was Hispanic, they didn't have any trouble understanding English at all. When I got up and started doing cross-examination, she acted like she'd never heard the word "the." Judge Bobby Bynum said, you know what's kind of funny? You understood all of his questions that just asked you. You knew English very well. Now all of a sudden you don't know what English is. I mean, Judge Bynum got it really quick. They lost that day because they played really stupid, and I had the factual case. One other thing I want to talk about district court. A friend of mine was having lunch with me one day, and we were talking about district court, and we were kicking around, if I could do this job, if I could do that job, what job would you want to do? A friend of mine said, Joe, I would be a district court judge any day. And I said, why? And he said, if you get it wrong, doesn't matter. They just appeal it to circuit court. There's no real liability on me. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you hope that you never get it wrong more than you get it right.
I know.
But I will tell you, as a young attorney, I heard Judge John Amari at one point make the comment to another attorney when the attorney expressed his displeasure with the way that Judge Amari ruled up here in Jefferson County. And Judge Amari looked at him and said, sir, he said, I understand your concern. And in 14 days, you might find that I am wrong. But today, I'm right. And you have every ability to appeal that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a comfort level, to some people in district court that, the worst you're going to do is cost somebody up to $20,000.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of money to a lot of people.
Sure.
But nobody's really going to go to prison in district court. Without it being a criminal case and getting bound over to grand jury, but then that's a whole other kettle of fish. But literally, about the worst that you can do is cost somebody up to about $20,000, and they have the opportunity, if they don't like the result, to appeal it within 14 days.
Absolutely.
So I look at it as, again, it's about public service, and, to take a judgeship, as a private attorney, you definitely take a pay cut. And it's not about the money. It's not about the robe, the title, or the status. It's about wanting to make sure that people know that justice lives in the courtroom.
That's a good way to end the half hour. All right, we're speaking with Jay Welborn. He's running for Shelby County District Court Judge. We'll be back after news and weather. Stay tuned. This is a great interview. We'll be back.
You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Joe is a 20-year veteran of the Alabama courts specializing in criminal defense and family law. If you need a private legal consultation, email Joe at joeingramlaw.com. And now, welcome back to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram.
All right, we're back for the last segment of the Legal Lowdown for February 28, 2026. We got the month of February in the book. We have Jay Welborn in the house. He's running for Shelby County District Court Judge. So we were talking during the break. I didn't know this specifically. Jay, you're not running for somebody's position. This is a new open judgeship that's been created for Shelby County.
That's correct. Back in 2024, the legislature and the Administrative Office of Courts did a caseload study for Shelby County. As long as you've been practicing, you're aware that Shelby County has needed a third district court seat for probably a decade or if not more, due to the increase in population. The last time we had a district court appointment for a judgeship in Shelby County was the mid-'90s, and back then I think the population was around 107,000, 108,000 people. I think the last definite number that I heard was 2024. I think we were up to about 229,000 people, so more than double since the last time we've had a district court seat allocated to us in Shelby County. And based on the caseload and the population increase, the legislature went ahead and allocated us a third seat. So this is a brand new seat, never before been filled, and it will hopefully, the goal is to take all of the civil cases that our criminal district court judge is handling and the civil cases that our juvenile court judge is handling and take that load off of them and combine them to put this in this district civil seat.
Do you have an idea yet? You probably do. How many roughly cases will you have out of the gate on a docket if you win the seat?
I would say right now I know my wife has got about 1,600 or 1,700 active cases on her load, and I think she told me that she's looking forward to transferring to the JID JCW because that will reduce her caseload to about 800. So I'll get about 1,000 cases from her, which are small claims collections and things of that nature. I'm not sure how much Judge Duncan has. Casey and I don't talk, closely about that kind of thing, and I don't feel comfortable necessarily asking him about his docket management. But I would venture to say it's probably going to be somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 cases out of the gate immediately.
Yeah. But the good thing about in district court, I would think, just thinking, legally and processing through courts, I would think district court cases would probably turn over faster, right?
They do. It's high volume, high speed.
Right.
There's not a lot of delay. It's all bench trial, so there's no striking a jury. My goal is for, larger, dollar injury cases, $10,000 to $20,000. I would love to be able to start a mediation program down in Shelby County and immediately order those cases to mediation within, giving a report within 90 days. Mm-hmm. And once that happens, if they can get it settled, great, wonderful, submit a report. If not, then we set it for trial in the next 60 days. So they're in and out in less than 6 months.
Right.
Whereas if they file it in circuit court, you may wait around 12, 18 months before you get your very first scheduling order. Mm-hmm. But most of these are going to be small claims, daily bench trials. You hear 3 or 4 or 5 a day. Get them in and out and get them results almost immediately.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad to see that happening for Shelby County. You know, one of my biggest pet peeves about going to Shelby County from being from Birmingham is the drive down there. I take one road in, one road out. I've always made this comment, not making anybody mad in Shelby County, is why can't they put a satellite courthouse closer to I-65 so we don't have to drive all the way down to Columbia?
You're right. You can't get there from here. You just, there's no good, quick way. Even coming all the way down 65, you got to get off at Alabaster or Calera, and then you got to take either 70 from Calera all the way in, or you got to take 31 to 26 and 26 to 70 to come into Columbiana. There's just not a good, quick, direct way. I would love it if we could have a satellite courthouse in the north part of the county. I just don't know that the county commission would allow that to happen. I don't know. That's kind of out of my realm. But I would love, because I live on the north part of the county, I would love to not have to drive 30 minutes even from my house to Columbiana. But I'm willing to do it.
Yeah. Do you know yet? You may not know this. I'm just thinking practically, because I'm thinking when I go down to Shelby County Courthouse, do you know where they're going to put this judgeship position in a courtroom yet?
I have no idea, because it is district court. There's going to be a lot of litigants there. It's going to be a lot of cases. I would venture to say that Judge Duncan and I are going to probably share a little bit of that large courtroom that he has now for his courtroom for big dockets and things like that. But there's a vacant courtroom upstairs on floor 3 next to Judge Alvis's courtroom.
Right.
But I really, that's going to be up to the courthouse administrator, and Judge Spann is presiding, because he's the one that assigns all the courtrooms and everything else as the presiding judge.
So you hadn't heard any scuttlebutt on that?
I have no idea.
Okay, I was just thinking curiously, because people that don't go or hadn't been down to Shelby County, Judge Duncan's down on the first floor. Your wife, Judge Aaron Welborn's down there on the first floor, lower level, where probate, down at Deer Round Probate Court. And then you get up to the second floor, and that's where most of the circuit court judges, Judge Kennedy, Judge Spann, Judge
Bostick's kind of on the 2.5 floor up in the ceremonial courtroom 5.
Right. So I was just thinking strategically where they're going to put this judgeship. Okay, that's great to know. So I ask everybody that comes in, how long have you been announced that you're running for this position?
Well, I started talking about it in August of 24 when we got the finalized word that this was going to be allocated to us. And I made the decision probably late September, early October of 2024 that I was going to resign from my position with the state, because you can't be on the state's dime and be a full-time candidate, because they tend to not want to pay you to do that. But I started campaigning when I resigned in December of 2024. My last day was Christmas Eve 2024, and I took 2 weeks off to spend some time with my family and to kind of regroup and start a plan. And then I started campaigning full-time January 5th of 2025. So I've been doing this well over a year.
Yeah.
So I was, I started announcing to people, then back in January of 25.
So I ask everybody, people that's never run for a position, much less a judgeship, are you tired? Are you tired from the traveling and the speaking? And
it can be tiring, but I look at it like this. It's kind of like I don't have to do this. I get to do this. It's a privilege for me. And I love getting out and meeting people and talking to people. My mom always said I don't meet a stranger. But the interaction with the public is actually my favorite part. And I know that there are a lot of people that don't like to knock on doors or make phone calls. But I love knocking on doors. I love walking the neighborhoods and getting to meet who the people are and hear their stories and things of that nature. And to get them aware of what district court does, because a lot of people don't vote for the judges. We got a big ballot coming up in May. We got the governor, lieutenant governor, all the constitutional offices are going to be on there. District court is on the backside of that ballot, all the way down right above the statewide amendments, like whether or not we want indoor goat raising in Marengo County. I'm not a goat farmer, and I don't live in Marengo County. I really don't care if we have them indoors or not. But they don't bother to go to the other side, because most people either think that I've never been to court, I don't care who the judges are, or I'm never going to go to court, so what does it matter who the judges are? So they just don't vote. So it's an undervoted category on the ballot. And when people tell me that, I say, well, I don't ever anticipate being on my back in the cardiac ER of UAB having open heart surgery. But by goodness, if I find myself in that situation, I want to make sure that the guy that's working on me and is in charge knows what he's doing. He's the right man for the job.
Right. That's important. A lot of people don't know that when they vote for judges, in any county for that matter. So how many miles have you traveled in your car in this quest?
Well, I'm not keeping mileage tallies really, but Shelby County is 808 square miles, and I have seen just about every corner of it at least 2, if not 3 or 4 times. I told my wife yesterday I came home. I'm a member of the Shelby County Cattlemen's Association. We're getting ready for our annual rodeo in Columbiana, and I went down to the exhibition center and helped set up, put up bucking chutes and pins and everything else yesterday for the rodeo tonight and tomorrow. I ache from putting out signs and driving T-bars, and I told her, I said, I don't remember it being this bad 4 years ago when she ran and I was out putting out signs and things for her, and she goes, well, you're 4 years older than you are now. So I have aches in spots that I didn't know existed, and it takes a little bit longer to get going in the mornings after a long day of putting out signs and being on the road and being on my feet and everything else. But again, I get to do this. This is a privilege. This is not something that I am forced to do or that I have to do. It's a privilege to me.
Yeah. You have you gotten to speak at a lot of breakfasts and dinners and lunches?
I have had more coffee and pancakes than I care to even recall. I have gotten to where I just go. I typically don't even eat anymore because,
right.
You can only have so much eggs and sausage and pancakes or have so much, baked chicken with green beans and a salad. But I've been to a lot of luncheons, been to a lot of coffees, been to a lot of breakfast meetings, and privileged.
Yeah, it makes you really appreciate the people in the state of Alabama when you get to go out and you get to talk to them, and they open up to you and they get to find out a little bit about you. I mean, isn't that exciting? It
is extremely exciting because everybody's got a story. I mean, regardless of whether it's court related or they know somebody that's had a court related story, or they just are shocked that somebody that's running for public office wants to sit down and meet with them one-on-one or to stand on their front porch and talk to them one-on-one. I had a lady that I spoke with that, goodness knows, her driveway was probably a quarter of a mile long. And I walked up to her front door and knocked on it, and she said, "Can I help you, young man?" I said, "Ma'am, I'm running for judge here in Shelby County. I'd just like to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about why I'm running." And she said, "Do you know in the 47 years that I have lived in this house, nobody has ever walked up the 483 steps that it is from my mailbox to my front door to knock on my door and ask for my vote." And I said, 480. She said, "I walk that every day to check the mail." So I know exactly how far it is, but nobody in the time that I have lived in this house has ever walked up my driveway to knock on my door and tell me who they are and ask for my vote. She said, "You got my vote." So that's important. I mean, people appreciate that personal touch. They appreciate being able to connect with, somebody that, they may not ever have a chance to meet if just out in public.
Yeah.
And that's important to me. I mean, it makes the difference if, when they go to the polls and they see my name on the ballot, they go, "Man, I met that guy. I know him. He came to my door, left me a sample ballot."
Yeah. Even though this is a county elected position, let me ask you something. Have you done a lot of social media advertising, or has it been more personal election campaigning?
I will say social media has become, in the last probably decade, a huge component of political campaigning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can reach so many people just on a Facebook or an Instagram post or a TikTok video or something of that nature. I'm kind of late to the game on TikTok and Instagram. I've had a Facebook page since I was, probably in my 30s, but it's a different world now where you have to, understand the algorithms and what you post and who you invite and how you like things and comment on things to develop. And the more you do that kind of thing, the more people that they show your information to. And you can do targeted ads to just Shelby County people. You can do targeted, you can find, streamline it down to people who have voted in the last 3 or 4 primaries only, if you wanted to.
Wow.
But yeah, so it's a huge component to the campaign because, again, it's 808 square miles with 227,000 residents. There's no way, even starting in January of last year, that I can meet every single one of those voters. So social media is a huge way that I can do that by, finding the people that live in Shelby County, messaging them, friending them on Facebook, showing posts, on Facebook that their friends will say, oh, hey, look at this guy, he's running for judge. Programs like this, that get out on the radio, meet and greets in different communities all over the county. That's important because you invite people to come and say, hey, this is who I am. Come and meet your candidate. I'll answer your questions and, talk to you.
Yeah. Gosh, I was just about to ask you a question. I forgot. Before I get to it, I want to ask you something. Spy for Rent, Jeff Hammock is my exclusive investigative firm here in town. You know them very well.
Oh, yeah. I love Jeff and Vicky both.
Okay. So I was told I have to ask you this question. How far back does your family go with Jeff Hammock's family?
Oh, good night. Well, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I knew Jeff when he had hair. Sorry, Jeff. But no, I love Jeff and Vicky. We have known each other for at least 15 or 20 years, at least. And I love Jeff to death. Jeff is, he was the first person to get on this whole private investigator licensing board for the state. Super crucial in getting that formed, and does great work with Spy for Rent. Jeff has done more investigating, and he's got a great method of drug testing for clients and things like that. He's got the little fingernail clipping thing that he does that's real quick. It's non-invasive, but they're just great people. And Jeff has always been in my corner. He's always been in my wife's corner. And when he called with the opportunity, he said, "Hey, I want you to go on my buddy Joe's radio show." It was not a question in my mind. Absolutely, I'll do it.
Yeah. We're talking with Jay Welborn. He's running for District County District Court Judgeship in Shelby County. Jay, is there anybody running on the Democrat side of the primary, or is it the candidates all on the Republican side? All
of the candidates are on the Republican side. So the primary, and if there is one subsequent runoff, will decide who the next district court judge is in Shelby County.
Is there a thought at that there might be a runoff? Has that been?
I hope not. But I would be remiss to think that with 3 other people running against me that I would be able to, in a county like Shelby County with qualified candidates, I would be remiss to think that if I could, get out of it with 50% plus one.
Okay.
So I look at it like the primaries tomorrow, and I'm already 10 points behind, and I have already removed the May 19th vote date off my calendar and moved it to June 16th, which is the date of the runoff, if there is one.
And the thing about a runoff is really scary because it's in June. Everybody's out of school. Everybody's going on vacations. Unless you're hardcore for a candidate, it's really hard to get people to go vote in a runoff election and show up somewhere.
It's hard to get them out to begin with in a primary. Fortunately, this ballot's got all the state offices, all the constitutional offices, so there's going to be a huge turnout anyway.
You're going to get that crossover.
You're going to get that crossover, and I'm hoping that they just flip that ballot over on the backside, and they vote all the way down. The runoff is very questionable because, like you said, it's summertime. People are on vacation. They're out of town. Either they don't know there's a runoff, and there's a lot of door knocking involved on that. A lot of phone calls involved on that after a primary is to make sure that people
That would be more scary for me of running in a runoff.
It is. But hopefully, you get the people that don't have a dog in the fight anymore will pick one side or the other to lean toward, and so that's always the goal, is to remind people to get out and vote on the runoff date,
right? And
encourage them to please find out about the 2 candidates that are there.
Yeah, man, that's important.
It is.
I'm glad we talked about that. Okay, so we're talking with Jay Welborn. He's running for district court judgeship. Jay, question most people don't know out there: how long is this position for if you're elected and you win statutorily?
If elected and win, it is a 6-year term.
Yeah.
And then we'll be back up for re-election in 6 years.
Right. So. And then under Alabama law for judges, you can't is it you can't run if you're 70 or what?
You can't be elected after 70 years of age. So
Right.
Right now, I'm 50. I could run 3 terms, be 68, and still run again for a 4th term because I would actually take the bench and be elected before I'm 70.
Right.
I would take the bench at 69 years of age. And then after that, I could not run for a 5th term because I would age out.
Right. That's where I was going.
So you can be 70 or older on the bench. You just can't run after your 70th birthday for another elected spot.
Right. I knew that was important. Okay, we're talking with Jay Welborn. He's got a lot of great experience. What would you think? You've talked about you had other jobs before you practiced law. What would be something in your background? You said you did firefighting, ministry, things like that, that would be good and make you a good candidate for a judge in those positions?
Well, in all those positions, you deal with everyday real people. You're not dealing with corporations. You're not dealing with big business. You're dealing with the public. You're dealing with everyday real people, families, small business owners, and things of that nature. And those are the exact people that come to district court. I mean, you're not going to have publics in district civil court. You're just not. I mean, unless it's a shoplifting case or something like that. But you're not going to have a large civil case. These are, little Miss Betsy, whose heritage roads beds were dug up by the neighbor's dog, and she had to pay $400 to have it replanted. Those are the people that, as a firefighter, as a, student ministry person, as everyday life, those are the people that I dealt with, that I got a chance to serve. And so I think that just my experience with real life helps me to see the side of people that come before the bench in district court.
Yeah, I think that's really crucial. I think that's important. Okay, so we got about 3 minutes left. What do you want to share with the audience out there for people of Shelby County that are listening to talk radio that are going to go to the polls here in 83 days?
Well, I think that the main important thing is that, nobody ever goes into court and it's their best day. I mean, when they walk through the doors of the courtroom, they're never having their best day. It's always a pretty cruddy day. And so I want when people to come in to know that justice lives there. They're going to get a fair shake. It doesn't matter, like I said, if they've got a team of 12 attorneys or whether they're representing themselves, whether they've got $50 million in the bank or 50 cents in their pocket. Doesn't matter what they wear. Doesn't matter what they drive. Doesn't matter what part of the county they come from. Nothing's been decided until the facts are heard. I'm not going to just look at them based on where they live or what they drive or what they're wearing and make a decision. They're going to know that when they leave that courtroom that justice truly lives inside that courtroom, that they got a fair shake, they were treated with respect and dignity, and that they were, listened to and heard. And that's probably the most invaluable thing that I think people want, is they want to be listened to, they want to be heard, they want to make sure that they get their day in court, they get to tell their side of the story. And that's just important to me because I've been on the attorney side representing those people and, have had to sit down and have them say, well, I just don't feel like he heard what I was trying to say. I understand. And I want people to understand that they're going to get that fair chance.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you real fast. I know in Shelby County they have the court reporters for the judges more than we do here in Jefferson County. We have to pay for our own up here. Well, will you have the ability to have a court reporter for your cases, or do you know that question?
I will be able to utilize one of the staff court reporters if necessary. Typically, district court's not a court of record. Especially like they don't have court reporters for traffic dockets or anything like that.
Well, I'm thinking about a small claims case.
But small claims, there is the ability to audio record through digital recording and things of that nature. So we could do a digital recording of the proceedings so that there is a voice and digital, audio transcript of it.
Yeah.
And if necessary, I guess we could get the court reporters to transcribe that. But if necessary, absolutely. You're talking about a $20,000 injury case. You're going to have some decent medical records and stuff come in. We might utilize one of the staff court reporters to come in and actually hear the case.
Yeah, that's important to know because anytime I go to district court, I try to have a court reporter. especially if it's a case with any real money involved. And I want to get that person on the record, get their testimony locked down if I know there's maybe an appeal. All right, folks, you got to hear from Jay Welborn. He's running for District Court of Shelby County, new judgeship on the primary in May. Jay, we thank you for coming in today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, final thought for today. I'm going to get this in. Responsibility comes before comfort. No one owes you anything, not even fairness. Control your emotions or they will destroy you. Your judgment discipline beats talent every single time. Stand your ground on the first sign of disrespect. Your word is a contract you sign with your character. Strength is built in boring, invisible moments. Walk away from anything that slowly disrespects you. Do the hard things first, especially when you don't want to. Take ownership even when it hurts your ego. Learn to solve problems without waiting for someone to guide you. Comfort and loneliness is a survival skill. Hard work is not punishment, it is training. Admit when you are wrong and fix it quickly. Do not chase people, chase standards. Learn skills that make you useful. Protect your time as it is your most limited resource. Learn to stay calm when things fall apart. Choose long-term respect over short-term pleasure. Do not let fear make decisions for you. Learn to say no without guilt. Keep difficult people at distance, and yes, that even includes family members. Build a life where your actions speak louder than your words. Stop expecting people to like you. Do not run from responsibility. Have a good week. Go run this week. We got beautiful weather for runners. Got to go. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Don't forget to follow Joe's Legal Lowdown podcast on iHeart. If you need a private legal consultation, reach out to Joe on his website, joeingramlaw.com. Tune in again next Saturday for the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by any other lawyer.